Do you believe that veganism could save 40,000 lives a day? And not animal lives, human lives. Do you believe that? Well, I don't, and it's also not the truth. But for some odd reason, some vegans on Reddit have come across an article by The Guardian which they completely misinterpreted for some reason I've yet to fully understand. And they found themselves spreading this concept, this idea that veganism could save 40,000 human lives a day, when that's not the case at all. I read the article, and it literally took about 4 seconds to see that what they were talking about was not veganism, though they were alluding to a plant-heavy, plant-focused diet, similarly to what I eat, mostly plants, fruits, vegetables, nuts, that kind of stuff, with some meat and all that mixed in, but I don't eat a whole lot of meat, So something more in line with like the Mediterranean diet, which, by the way, is globally considered one of the best diets for human beings in general. Obviously, things will vary person to person, but in general, Mediterranean diet probably will work for most people and do a pretty good job at keeping you healthy. But I'm not surprised. Vegans were just always looking for every little win that they can possibly get, even when it's not a win at all. And then they end up just making fools out of themselves, which is precisely what has happened. And we're here to laugh about it and to talk about it and to talk about the facts and the interesting things around it. So if you want to hear that sort of enticing information, make sure to stick around. Here's what these delusional goofballs write. Vegan food could save the planet and 40,000 lives a day, Lancet. Now, before we even get to the stupid comments, let me read the article first. Let's set the record straight, shall we? Planetary health diet could save 40,000 deaths a day, Landmark report finds. Diet allows modest meat consumption. Wow, it took 2 seconds. 2 seconds to realize that this diet wasn't vegan. Wow, that's it. It's like their comprehension skills are atrocious. Now hold on. I said we'd read the article, but now that I've already disproven their stupidity, let me go show you the stupidity before we come back and read the article. And this person responds, and countless innocent animals. What are you talking about? This isn't vegan. What? Now, there's this like whole thread of some person actually just trying to like make an argument, which is actually a good one, which I do want to talk about. We'll come back to that later, I promise. This person says, and 40,000 is just the humans. This person says, best way to put it. So on to the actual article, now that you've seen the stupidity that exists within this community. Adoption of plant-rich planetary health diet could prevent 40,000 early deaths a day across the world, according to a Landmark report. A diet which allows moderate meat consumption, not vegan, by the way, in case you didn't know that, and related measures would also slash the food-related emissions, driving global heating by half by 2050. Today, a third of greenhouse gas emissions come from the global food system, and taming the climate crisis is impossible without changing how the world eats, researchers said. Food production is also the biggest cause of destruction of wildlife and forests and the pollution of water. You know what else is a terrible contribution to environmental destruction, like trees and stuff, is toilet paper. 70% of the world doesn't use toilet paper, allegedly, but the other 30%, we're cutting down hundreds of millions of trees. It's kind of crazy. The planetary health diet sets out how the world can simultaneously improve the health of people and the planet and provide enough food for an expected global population of 9.6 billion people by 2050. The diet is flexible, allowing it to be adapted to local tastes and can include some animal products or be vegetarian or vegan. However, all versions advise eating more vegetables, fruits, nuts, legumes, and whole grains than most people in the world currently eat. In many places, today's diets are unhealthy and unsustainable due to too much meat, milk, and cheese, animal fats, and sugar. People in the US and Canada eat more than 7 times the PhD's recommended amount of red meat, which it is 5 times more in Europe and Latin America and 4 times more in China. However, in some regions where people's diets are heavily reliant on starchy foods, such as sub-Saharan Africa, a small increase in chicken, dairy, and eggs would be beneficial to health, the report found. Yo, what's up? Don't mind me, just butting in real quick. Just wanted to remind you guys that I have a drama channel that's focused on talking about hilarious, ridiculous, crazy drama that I find on Reddit. So if you like this kind of style of video that you're watching right now, I guarantee you'll enjoy those videos too. And we got a few about vegan topics too that, will definitely keep things interesting. So it's called Curlington Stories. Should be a link in the description, in the comments. The video will pop up on the end screen. You'll find ways to get there if you're interested. And please do. I'd love to see you guys over there. All right, back to the video. You see, what's interesting is it's all about balance, right? When it comes to diets and stuff. I've talked about like the red meat consumption quite a bit whenever I address like the steak and butter gal or the carnivore diet. And I'll talk a little bit more about it right now, actually. It's true. In the United States, boy, do we love our hamburgers. Boy, 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 do we love our steak. Yes, we eat like the most red meat in the world, I think, or we're in the top. We're in the top for certain. And it is much, much, much more than a person needs to be healthy. In fact, it is far into the territory of unhealthy, just as this article states. I know a lot of people don't want to hear that, as I've talked about this before and explained how red meat can contribute to certain types of cancer, heart disease, things like that. You know, high cholesterol, the LDL cholesterol, the bad cholesterol, because not all cholesterol is bad. Good cholesterol comes from things like nuts and healthy fats like avocados and things. So there's a, division between the two. So yeah, lowering red meat consumption could actually lower the cancer epidemic that is happening in the United States and many other places, as well as heart disease by a significant amount. That doesn't mean you shouldn't eat any red meat. It is actually quite healthy as well in moderation because of the fats, the protein content, and tons of other nutrients that are extremely bioavailable in meats versus plants, right? It's one of the things I've always talked about. It's like, while plants and, nuts, seeds, all that stuff and fruit can be extremely healthy, there is always going to be a caveat to everything, which is why balance is key. For some people, getting certain nutrients from plants can be a challenge, can be quite difficult. Some people have difficulty with plants entirely. If you have something like ulcerative colitis, plants can agitate that quite a bit. So for some people, it's best to avoid eating too many plants, and they might have to eat a meat heavier diet, but that doesn't mean red meat. There are some fantastic meats out there that are nutrient dense and don't contribute to heart disease. In fact, they have the opposite effect, and that would be things like fish. Ones that are quite heart healthy, you look for the ones that are high in omega-3, like salmon, sardines, mackerel, herring, things like that. And then there's also, high protein fish like tilapia and halibut. It doesn't mean that if you are somebody who doesn't do that great with plants that you should just go eat an entire cow. Not exactly the best thing for your heart. You can find things that are good for your heart that you can still consume, like fish. Regarding the increase of plants, a lot of people could do that as well. There are some people that just eat way, way, way too much like red meats and stuff, and it would probably be a benefit to them to actually have maybe a potato or some broccoli or some spinach or some kale, things like that in their diet too. Balance is key, and one person's balance won't be the same as someone else. For me and my wife, we do pretty darn good with mostly plant-based foods, but we also still eat things like chicken, and I occasionally eat fish, and that's totally healthy for us. Might not work for you, so people have to find what works for them. Now, what they're suggesting, the Guardian, of this heavily plant-based diet, which will obviously factor in some amounts of meat and stuff like that, can be beneficial likely for most people. So it's not the worst thing in the world. And I could definitely believe that it would save lives because it would correct a lot of horrible eating habits that many people have, especially us on the standard American diet here in the United States. It's one of the worst diets in the world. Heavy on processed food, heavy on junk, heavy on red meat, heavy on pretty much everything that you should eat in moderation. So that is a problem, and it would probably reduce heart disease and cancer in the United States. It would reduce it in places like the United Kingdom, all over the world that isn't already doing something like this. And no, it's not veganism. That is not the answer. In fact, if everybody went vegan, you would probably see a negative in front of that 40,000 a day. You'd probably seeing 40,000 people drop like flies every single day if everybody went vegan, let's be honest. Now back to this little comment thread here, because this is another talking point that I find really interesting. So this person proposes a thought-provoking comment, which of course gets disliked bombed to hell, even though they're just being a critical thinker and making these people think about, what they're putting out on the internet. But of course, everybody wants to be offended instead of conductive. So they say, but those animals don't exist without the demand for their consumption. I think it's more accurate to say you prefer farm animals to not exist rather than say you are saving animals by being a vegan. And this person says, we're saving them from a life of pain. If some mad scientist bred humans to experiment on and we stopped him, even if we killed his subjects, wouldn't it be saving them from more pain? And this person responds again, how would a life as a free-range chicken or cow be painful? The person says free-range, you know what, honestly, I don't even really want to read their answer, but I'll say it anyway. Free-range, in quotations, chickens spend the majority of their time in squalid indoor conditions with only a short reprieve of limited outside time. Many of those chickens never actually see outside, and many of them die from illness or injury associated with the conditions they're kept in. Well, that's not free range. So this person is actually just putting out some thought-provoking questions and they're just not being taken seriously. It's either that or these people just don't actually have intelligent answers. And I mean, considering they think this article is about like promoting veganism and saying that veganism can save 40,000 lives a day, human lives, probably tells you everything you need to know about their comprehension skills. But let me actually address this person's question because they're good questions. Now, when they say free range, this is more of a hypothetical. For some, in some ways, free range is a real concept. It does exist. There are animals that live out on farms, local farms, and things like that, that are free range, that aren't kept in factory cage conditions like this person's describing, the person responding. So it's apparent that they don't understand what free range means because obviously the person that left this comment meant free range, what that actually is. And this person described something completely different than free range. So we're just going to ignore this person's blatant stupidity and just address the actual question. So if chickens and cows were all free range, how would what vegans want be saving them from a life of torture or whatever they want to call it? It's life of suffering if they did not suffer their entire lives. The answer is they wouldn't. So then that almost pretty much directly supports the claim, right? That vegans, these types of vegans, don't want to see animals saved. They want to see farm animals be non-existent. Because if they wanted to see animals, quote unquote, saved and live, sustainable lives or whatever, then they would support the idea of free range, etc. Because then these animals do get to live a life without suffering. Do they have an expiration date? Absolutely. Are animal products and the consumption of animals necessary for the survival of the human species? Absolutely as well. It's a necessary thing, regardless of how vegans want to interpret it. And this isn't the first time I've come across this notion that vegans want to see farm animals be non-existent more so than they want to see them quote unquote saved or rescued or whatever it is. It's true. By their logic, it is true. They want to end all exploitation, etc., which means goodbye to farm animals because you can't just release them into the wild. They'll first eat all of their available food and then they'll eat each other and then they'll starve to death. Like it's pretty obvious how this would play out. There's just not enough predators. There's a reason why there's this balance of the ecosystem of herbivores that eat the plants and the omnivores and the predators that eat, the herbivores or each other really. And it keeps ecosystems balanced. Everybody knows this. It's extremely important. If you completely disrupt that entirely by just releasing tons of herbivores or omnivores, etc., like pigs, oh god, dude, their stomachs are black holes. They can eat like crazy. If it isn't for human agriculture, they don't have access to all the food that they would need. And that's just pigs. Put cows in the mix who eat tons and tons and tons of grass. Put chickens in the mix. Like, you've got yourself an environmental disaster, an environmental catastrophe. It's just impractical. It doesn't make sense. But when that question's brought up, they always do respond the same way of, well, we want their suffering to end, which if that means by proxy that cows, chickens, pigs, whatever else are only, really exist in captivity like this go extinct, then that's a win for veganism somehow, which is, about protection of animals. Most animals and their species just want their species to continue and to live. That's kind of the purpose of an animal's to live. Human agriculture of these animals is keeping them alive. While the conditions can absolutely be improved and be better, they should be. And something like reducing how much red meat consumption or meat consumption in general that we have could help with that, because then the demand for farmland, factory farms, whatever, decreases exponentially. And with that decreased demand, you can improve the conditions and the spaces that they actually have to give more animals access to free range, which then would be a solution, right? You would think, according to vegans, but it's not about the suffering or exploitation of animals, because that is a solution, what I just said, but they never see that as a solution. They still have a problem with that. It's about moral superiority, and it's about not wanting people to do something that you allegedly disagree with. That's all it is. And that's why the vegan movement has completely failed. I feel like we need this like in between of just this general like help animals suffer less, but give it a cool name or something like that. We need a new movement that's actually rational and would actually help animals. Like, I don't even know what to call it. But if you guys have any ideas, maybe we'll start that. Maybe we'll start something new about the just maybe being more mindful about how much meat we consume and trying to reduce the impact of factory farms and actually give that movement a name. I don't know. What do you guys think? If you have any clever ideas, please leave them in the comment section below. And I'm going to start using it. I'm going to start using it going forward. Maybe we'll start something new that actually has an impact. I think it's a great idea. For those of you who care about animals, you're probably still watching this video, which means you also think it's a great idea. I mean, come on. I thought of it. Has to be. No, I'm just kidding. But I'll see you guys next time. Take care.